We are learning from a sefer, which is called Likuti Torah. It's written by the first Rebbe of Chabad. It's a continuation of the book that we've been learning up to now, which is called Torah Or. It's really just two different names for the same continuum of speeches. These were speeches that were put into written form, essay form, and they're speeches of the first Rebbe of Chabad. The first Rebbe of Chabad, his name was Rabbi Shneur Zalman, about 250 years ago. He also wrote the book, the Tanya. The ideas of the writings of Chabad are have a purpose, and the purpose is to bring Mashiach. That's the whole purpose. And Mashiach depends to a very, very great deal on our education, on what we think, what we think the world is, what we think reality is. It depends a tremendous amount. When the Jews got out of Egypt, so they got out of Egypt, but so to speak, the Egypt didn't get out of the Jews. The Jews got out of Egypt. They weren't accustomed to being servants of the creator of the universe. They didn't know what it meant. And suddenly they had this choice. When they were in Egypt, they had no choice. They had to be servants of Paro. And when they got out of Egypt, so they had a choice. Either they could serve God or they could serve themselves, which that's the essence of serving God, is having free will. The essence of serving God is the free will, because you have to serve God, as we say in our prayers, with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and all of your might. It has to come from you. Serving God is not just being selfish, thinking about yourself, and doing the commandments in order to go to heaven. That's called serving yourself. Okay, maybe it's better than nothing, but it's not. Better than nothing is, what do they say? Like a person right before he dies, so he's death throes. What's better than nothing? That's what better than nothing is. Better than nothing is like, not really alive, but not really dead. So better than nothing means that you're doing what you have to do. You're saying what you have to say, but you're doing it all for yourself. When the Jews were in Egypt, they had no thought. They had no free choice. They had to do what Paro said, or they would be killed. They had to say. When they got out of Egypt, all of a sudden they got a new thing. They could make free choices. And that's the idea of going out of Egypt, that you become really free. But there's two things. There's being free from, and there's being free to. There's somewhere over there in the background, one of our listeners, our dear, precious listeners, that there's all this noise in the back. So I'm going to have to turn people off. Who is this?
Patty, please mute yourself, Patty.
No, someone is either they're while they're doing this, they're.
We only have one person that wasn't muted, Patty. Okay, he's muted now.
Well, here we have. There's you, Menachem. I'm not.
I just unmuted myself.
Nothing personal, but okay. Let's go.
No, it wasn't me. I just unmuted myself.
All right. You're innocent. I'm not. No. There's no punishment over there. There's no. What is it? Cyber police or anything like that. Okay, let's go. All right. So
thank you, Patty.
The Jewish people got out of Egypt, and when they got out of Egypt, they have this new thing called free will, right? Free will, which means that they could choose to serve God or not. And serving God means making the right choice. When they were at Mount Sinai, again, they were forced to receive the Torah. And as soon as Moses wasn't there to encourage them to make the right choices, so they worshiped the golden calf. The golden calf basically means selfishness. Selfishness is the source of all of these bad choices. On the other hand, selfishness, that's the name of the game. That's what God wants. He wants us to use ourself and to make the right choices. So in order to do that, you have to be educated. You have to be inspired. And that's the whole idea of Chabad Hasidut. That's the whole idea of Mashiach. Mashiach is going to educate and inspire the Jews, first of all, and from the Jews, all mankind, to realize that we are creations and that we have the opportunity to actually be partners with the Creator. Now, this is an incredible idea, but it's true. It's not just a religious idea, it's a fact. We are being created. The world is not our world. Nothing in the world belongs to us. Everything in the world belongs to the Creator. But the Creator says that there's such a thing as possessions, there's such a thing as stealing, and there's such a thing as lying, and there's such a thing as bad, and there's such a thing as good. The Creator says. The Creator says. But in order to really do what the Creator wants, you have to appreciate the Creator. That's the idea. It's supposed to be to appreciate. In other words, you de-emphasize your attention on yourself, and you start to emphasize your attention on your Creator, the God that's creating you. So that was the whole idea of the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple was to show how important this physical world is and how to serve God. That was the thing of the temple, to serve God. In the Holy Temple, where it was called the tabernacle, when it was in the desert. In English, it's called a tabernacle. It's called the Mishkan. Mishkan, and the dwelling place of God. How they got tabernacle from that, I don't know. But I guess maybe because it was a tent, so it was moving. I guess that's in English, the word tabernacle. Somewhere where there's, you ever hear of a tabernacle? You go into a store and say, I would like to buy a tabernacle, but nobody knows what you're talking about. Anyway, that's what it's a Mishkan. A Mishkan. The Mishkan was the place where God's dwelled, so to speak. His presence was there. God's presence. What does it mean his presence was there? You go to the Mishkan, you'd feel that the whole entire world is a creation. You'd feel that I am also being created. And you're being created for a purpose, to serve the Creator, to use my limbs and my emotions and my intellect and my mouth and to do what the Creator wants. And what does the Creator want? He wants pretty much normal things. I mean, we should just be human beings. We should get married. We'd have children. We'd have a job. But most important, we should use our potential, our talents, our abilities to serve the Creator. In other words, use the creation, everything in the creation, to manifest the fact that there's a Creator and the Creator has a will. Okay, so let's go. Now we finished that. Where does God want this dwelling to be? It says, betachtonim, in the physical world, in this low physical world. The lower. What's the lowest thing in the physical world? Or free will. You can use your free will to rebel against God. You can rebel against your Creator. How do you do that? By worshiping yourself. By thinking about yourself all the time. I want to go to heaven, and I want to receive this, and I knew this, and I. Okay, that's what God wants. He wants the physical world to be, okay, hine. Hamshachas derazu, in order to make this dwelling place for God in the world, this is by means of self-control. We did this before. And by means of this self-control, eventually it comes to self-transformation. What does it mean? What's self-control, self-transformation? Self-control means you use willpower. Willpower. Mind over matter. You use your will in order to change your desires. Force yourself. You force yourself to do good. You force yourself to refrain from bad. And after that, becomes self-transformation. Self-transformation means you enjoy doing good. You get pleasure from it. And you hate doing bad. You hate bad. Maybe I can give you an example of what this is like. And this is in general, in the world, every human being has a nature and has, blemishes in his nature. Has bad character traits. Everybody has. And you have to work on them in order to get, everybody's naturally selfish. That's the way God makes people. Some people are more prone to anger, and other people are more prone to desire, and other people are prone to addictions, and etc. So we have to work on these things. That's called using your willpower. We talked about that last time. But then after that, you can come to enjoy. Maybe that's called eshapcha, transformation. Let me give you an example. Let's say there's somebody you work in. We're talking about now. We're working for God, right? So working for God. So first you have to force yourself, and then you come to really enjoy it. And because after all, what God wants is good. I'll give you an example. Let's say a person works in some sort of an office, a big office. There's hundreds of workers, and the boss comes to this person and says, "How would you like to have a couple of rounds of golf with me? Play golf." So this person, he's got the sense to say, Sure, boss, whenever you want to. The fact of the matter is he hates golf. This guy hates golf. Most boring sport in the world. It's not a sport to him. It's just that he can't understand why anyone would want to waste their time hitting a little ball around the thing. But the boss says to do it, and this is a chance to be together with the boss. Maybe get a raise. Maybe get to know the boss. So he says, okay. So what does he do? He runs, and the boss says, so when would you like to do it? So he says, well, 2 weeks. So in those 2 weeks, he goes and he takes classes and this, and he learns how to hold the club and how to hit and everything. So he goes and he forces himself. He forces himself to know how to putt and how to drive and how to do these things. and he hates every moment of it. He can't stand it. It's the most boring thing in the world. But it's together with his boss. And his boss once in a while says, you having a good time? And he has to smile and says, oh, yes, boss, this is really great. I haven't golfed in so long. And really never. Then after a while, he starts, he's forcing himself. And afterwards, he starts to really the boss says, hey, you got a real good backswing. You really enjoy this? He says, yeah. And he really starts to enjoy it. He really starts to get into golf, and he really enjoys golfing, and he really enjoys that, that long drive and that long putt or whatever that is. I mean, I've gone golfing, I think, once in my life, and I really can't understand the whole thing. But anyway, so he really enjoys it. He really enjoys it. And now he really gets into it. He really realizes, wow, I'm a golfer. He could even become a professional golfer. I never knew I had this talent. He likes it. That's called eskafia and esapra. Eskafia means you have to force yourself. Like the person had to force himself to enjoy and pretend he was enjoying. We have to force ourselves to do what it says in the Torah. We have to force ourselves to avoid what it forbids in the Torah. We have to force ourselves. It's not natural. But then afterwards, we start to realize, hey, this is really good. I'm really doing what God wants, and God is creating me, and God is okay. Up to now, I've just been living in my own self. And now I realize that my parameters are infinitely greater. So that's what's called eshapcha. He starts to really enjoy doing what God wants, controlling himself to, how do you say, instead of pushing himself, now he's pulled to do good. And he detests doing anything bad. Okay, this is where we got up to last time. It's known, okay, the Jewish people, by means of doing the commandments, they are called the the house of God, the Heichal Hashem, the chamber of God. Heichal Hashem, because the positive commandments and the negative commandments, they all they're connected to the name of God. Now, we said this before, but I think there's some new people today, so I want to repeat it again, and it's worth repeating. There's a lot of religions in the world. The only one that has commandments is Judaism. All the other commandments have their rituals, their ceremonies, their whatever is their heritage, their holidays. But Judaism has commandments. What's commandment? The commandment is what God wants right now from each and every one of his commandments, of his creations. First of all, beginning with the Jews. The Jews first. The Jews, they received the Torah. They received the commandments. The Jews are God's chosen people. God chose the Jews to tell the world, tell all the non-Jews how much he loves them, to tell the whole world how good God is. That God is creating everyone. That God is you can connect to God. That's what a commandment is. The word mitzvah is a command, is a connection. Tzavta. There's positive commandments, and those things that you should do. That's like your limbs. And then there's prohibitions. There's more prohibitions than there are positive commandments. In the Torah, there are 248 positive commandments. A lot of them depend on the Holy Temple, laws that are on the Holy Temple. Nowadays, there's altogether the negative and positive commandments are 613. And I read somewhere that nowadays is only really relevant 270. Until the Moshiach comes and builds the third temple, there's a lot of commandments which depend on the Kohanim, the priests, on purity and impurity, right? Bringing sacrifices. These are only going to be when Moshiach builds the third temple. We'll have these commandments back again. So there is the commandments, they are manifestations of the name of God. The commandments, they are a manifestation of the name of God. The negative commandments, the prohibitions, they are in the name, the first two letters of God's name. God has a name. God has a lot of names. But one of the names of God is Yud, and then Hey, and then Vav Hey. The negative commandments, that is connected to the first two letters of God's name, Yud Hey. And the positive commandments are connected to the lower two letters of God's name, Vav Hey. And therefore, al yedei mitzvah, by means of doing the positive commandments and avoiding the prohibitions, nase bechinat heichal, we become a palace, a chamber for God. Ukli, and a vessel, legilui shem avaya, for the revelation of the name of God. Really, asher zeu inyan shachanti betocham. That's what it means. I dwell within them. Kamosh katuv lakaman. Like we see later on in Parshat Pekudei Amishkan, Mishkan Edut. That's what it says two times, Mishkan, Mishkan. This week's Torah portion starts off. These are the laws of the Mishkan, Mishkan Edut, two times Mishkan. We'll talk about this in a moment. Okay, so here we have a lot of novel ideas, but they're all based on one principle, and that is how precious this physical world is. It's in this physical world that God gave the Torah. It's in this physical world, using physical things, that God wanted the Jews to do the commandments. And most, like the ideal, ultimate commandment is the Holy Temple. Everything in the Holy Temple, there's a book called Minchas Chinuch, and there he explains in great detail the psychological effect of the temple had on the people that went to it. That you felt godliness, you were encompassed by godliness, your speech, your eyes, all of your senses were filled with exactly what God wanted, the smell of the incense, the sight of the Kohanim, etc. So the Jewish people now, when they do the commandments, they become the vessel for God. What does this mean? What does it mean? Listen, I mean, it's not really that difficult an idea to conceive of. You have all these movie stars and rock and roll stars and things like this. You got a fellow, he stands up on the stage and like 1 million people are watching him every move, and he's just a person like everybody else. But he has a certain talent. He has a talent that he makes everybody feel good. He sings a song, everybody likes the song. No one else can sing the song like this person sings, and he makes everybody feel good. And so it's the same thing, lahavdil, to separate with the Holy Temple and with the Jewish people in general, right? They have something that no one else has, namely a feeling of the Creator, and they inspire in everyone, just like the singer inspires harmony or whatever inside of everyone, pleasure. So the Holy Temple inspires this pleasure and harmony of everybody, and the pleasure is in serving the Creator. Greatest pleasure in the world. To know that you are important to the Creator of the universe, and your deeds and your actions are important. And to be able to stop thinking about ourselves, which that's the secret, that's the cause of all depression and aggression, is thinking too much about yourself. But you can't stop thinking about yourself unless there's something else to think about. Right? And that other thing to think about is your Creator, God, more real. Zatzin, rabbis say, Atirim chad tzaddikim, then in the future, the tzaddikim, the righteous Jews, that will say in front of them, Kodesh, in front of the righteous Jews, that people will say they are holy. Hainu mishum she'al yidei Torah, because by means of the Torah and the commandments that they did, hey mamshichim al nafsham, they draw on their soul, giloi, or ein sof, the revelation of godliness, just like it was in Mount Sinai, just like it was in the temple, in a more subtle way. Shehu bechinas kodesh umuvdal. They became holy and separate. Therefore, neged gimel pamim kodesh, corresponding to the 3 times that the angels say, holy, holy, holy. Right? You look in the visions over there of Ezekiel. It says he sees these angels, and they're all saying, holy, holy, holy. The angels. Why do the angels say 3 times holy? It says in the prophecy of Jeremiah that the Jewish people are the vessel for God. It says it 3 times. Namely, 3 garments of the soul: thought, speech, and action. That they depend on doing other commandments. When the Jewish people use their thought, speech, and action, which means their brain and their mouth and their limbs to serve the Creator, this is a big novelty. They do it with their free will. The angels can't do a thing like that. The angels have no free will. The angels are like animals. The angels automatically. There used to be in Kfar Chabad, there used to be what is it? A milk farm. There's a word for that in English. Anyway, there's a milk farm. There's a fellow. His name was Zusha Rivkin, a blessed memory. He was a nice fellow, and he had a farm that he grew. There was cows. Kfar Chabad was like a very much more agricultural place. when it first started in like 1949. So there were people that grew chickens and grew turkeys, and there were people that this. And it was one guy, he had a cow farm. So I used to go sometimes and just watch the cows. It was very interesting. And they would all be in the trough, in the barn, slushing around in the mud. And then he would like sound a bell or something like that, and they would all file in to eat. They filed through this sort of a narrow passageway, and then he would direct them, each one, to a stall. The first one would get a stall, and then while they were eating, he would milk them, right? But the interesting thing is, there was never such a thing as one cow, say, after you, giving away, being polite to another cow. Every cow thought about himself, right? Every cow was thinking about himself. That's the nature of cows. That's the nature of animals. They think about themselves. They also have the nature, they think about their children for a certain amount of time, that they take care of their children, they care about them. Okay, but that's implanted in them. That's their nature. They can't change their nature. But that's what the angels are. The angels, good, they don't have to walk around and slush around in the barn, but they do. They're up in the upper worlds. They do eat, and their food is the spirituality, and they always want more. They're always crying out, "Holy, holy, holy," but they don't get this food until the bell sounds. Who sounds the bell? The Jews. When the Jews do what they're supposed to in this world, that makes the whole entire business start to work. That's pressing the button. Then they get revelations. The Jews draw down these revelations of God, and then the angels, they start to say, "Holy, holy, we want more, we want more." That's the Hainu, namely, the whole idea of this whole business is that we want to make a dwelling in this physical world. That the souls in this physical world, in bodies, would be vessels, lebechinat kodosh, to be to this level of holiness of God, like the holy temple was. And again, what happens when a person feels God? You feel, hey, I am being created. I am important to the creator of the universe. I have a responsibility to the creator of the universe to improve this world. To use my thought, speech, action, everything I have in order to do with it exactly what the creator wants me to. Like it says, Bekirbecha kadosh, that your insides should be holy. That's what it means. God says, I will dwell within them. Davka, because all this is made by means of eskafia. This is made by forcing yourself to do good, to turn from bad and to do good. Forcing yourself not to be selfish. Even though every human being feels that they are God, and that's why God made us. Right? He made us in his image. Just like God feels that there's nothing before him. And there's certainly, so he wants us to feel that also, that there's nothing before us. I am it. Everything starts with me. But that feeling God put into us so that we should defy it, and even more to transform it. Okay, so that's the whole idea of the Holy Temple. We take physical things, normal things, we make a temple, and that's the idea of saying 3 times, holy, holy, holy. The Jewish people draw down holiness into the world. And what does holiness mean? Holiness means a revelation, a feeling of the Creator in the creation. In other words, a healthy world. Let's say that we can say the difference between Uncle Joe, if he's, or whatever it is, if he's, unconscious, he's in a coma, and if he wakes up. In any case, it's the same person. There he is. There's Uncle laying out there. Well, as soon as he becomes conscious, it's the same exact person, but it just becomes revealed all of his talents. That's the idea. The world is in a comatic state, and revealing God in the world wakes the world up. We see how wonderful and beautiful and positive the world is. It becomes a little bit more difficult to make those bad choices. Like a normal person would not take heroin, right? A normal person would not, be decadent, even though they're trying to teach people now in the schools in America to yes be so. But the normal person doesn't. Normal person wants to have get married, to have a family, to have children. Such a beautiful thing. Have children, nothing like it. He feels bad if he can't have children. That's a normal human being. He wants to make more human beings. That's normal. The world will be filled with meaning, with life, with health. Be a normal, healthy world. And then it'll even be more. People will not just, the world will be healthy on its own, but it'll be able to do a job, to be able to contribute, to make this world good. Basically, in this world, especially the way things are going now, people have no idea of what is good. The thing has become so convoluted that they think that bad things are good. It's really, the world is very, very upside down. And perhaps the biggest example of this is homosexuality. Homosexuality is perhaps one of the worst things that can possibly be in the world. Perhaps one of the worst things, one of the most self-destructive. It's anti-life. There's none of those people who do that were born from such a relationship. It was always they had a mother and a father, a female and a male. So they don't want life, and they don't want family, and they don't want this. I mean, you can't blame them. This is the world, the society is educating everybody to just do whatever they want to. So you can't blame anyone. No one's going to be burning in hell or something because they do these things. But the fact of the matter is, it's tremendously, tremendously, tremendously self-destructive and tremendously egotistical. It's the only saving virtue of the whole thing is that it feels good. That's all. Except for that, it's not benefiting anybody, and it's destroying the life. It's preventing having a healthy world. Having God revealed in the world means that you want to be productive like God is. You want to be positive like God is. You want to be a creator like God is, not a destroyer. And everyone will feel the goodness, the preciousness of this world of life, etc. Okay, that's what I'm trying to point out is that it's very hard for us to get an idea of what good is, and that's one of the things that Chassidut wants to do, how good God is. Tamur uki tov Hashem, taste and know that God is good. Hine, tzorech lav, we have to understand the time. Reason why is it that the glory of God is spread out in the world? It's Yikara the Kodesh Baruch Hu. It says the glory of God, the revelation of God comes from that which we force ourselves. We force ourselves to rid ourselves of our selfish impulses. We force ourselves to do good. We force ourselves. Why this thing of forcing yourself to defy natures? Sitra achra means the other side, nature. Halo eina sitra achra tofes makom klal. I thought that God is everything. God is creating everything. This nature and opposition to God, it's nothing. Bishtalshus kudua. Shemamis biyadayim tetofes. It says like this, that, I mean, God is so great and God is so awesome. God is creating everything. He's creating all the stars. We see from King David how he praises God. Marabu masach, how great are your deeds, God. God, you create all these stars and nebulae and things like that. They once asked the Rebbe if there was a person, Professor Green, a blessed memory. He was in. It was it was a professor in no, it was biology, but it wasn't in ecosystems or something. I can't remember what it is. He worked for NASA, and they at that time were doing studies. This was like in the 50s, 50s, 60s, on if there's life on Mars. So he asked the Rebbe, if it's permissible for him to do a thing like that. Maybe life on Mars, maybe it's, denying the uniqueness of man or something. So the Rebbe said exactly the opposite. If you discover that there is life on Mars, and they could be, the Rebbe said it could be, that if there is, then it shows, it indicates more the greatness of God, that he can create creations on Mars, and the more that you see the greatness of the creation and things that God creates, so the more you can appreciate the Creator. So God is so good, and the whole world is like nothing for God. God is creating the whole world with like one little word, one letter, creating the whole entire universe with all the stars and the nebulae. And that's only the physical world. What about the spiritual worlds? There's all the angels. Read over there in Ezekiel and Isaiah. That puts all these UFO stuff to shame. The UFO things that's nothing compared to what it says in Isaiah. And they saw real angels. It says one angel can destroy a whole city. Right? An angel. The angels all got together. They could destroy the universe. Who knows what? It says that the universe, each angel is 3 times as big as the universe. What that means, I have no idea. There's one opinion that says that's not so, not 3 times. They're only 1/3 of the universe, because the angels are spiritual. And how many angels are there? It says there's in each group of angels, there's Rivoy Ravavos. So that means like 100 million, I guess, angels in each group. But there's an infinite number of groups. So there's an infinite, multiply 100 million by infinity. What do you get? The same thing as if you multiply 1 by infinity. It's the same thing, isn't it? Same thing. And all this is nothing to God. It's just creations. These are just creations of God, spiritual, physical. And we Jews, we're the sons of God. Huh? We're the connected to the King of the universe. So what's this idea? We have to worry about the Sitra Achra, the powers of evil. That's like nothing. The angels are like nothing to God. Why do we have to fight this battle? And when we do succeed, so this, God gets tremendous pleasure, and the pleasure of God is what? It will be understood, first of all, by understanding what are positive commandments and what are negative commandments. Kihine Yedua, it's known what it says in Tikuni Zohar. That was that book I told you about before. Where is it here? Oh, here I have it. See, Tikuni Zohar. It's 70 different explanations, Kabbalistic explanations on the word Bereshit, on the first word of the Torah. 70 different Kabbalistic explanations. It says in the beginning, a page Dalid, on the end of the second side. Anyway, Ze Shemi La'olam, Ze Zichri. There's a sentence that says, this is my name. God spoke to Moses at the burning bush, and he said that my name is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. That's my name. This is my name forever. This is how you say it. My mention. So Shmi, the letter Shmi, this is a little bit complicated, but it's not too complicated. Here. Shmi is a numerical value. This is my name. The letters in Hebrew are numbers. In Hebrew, there's no number system. There's no number system. The numbers are the letters. The letters are numbers. There's no 1, 2, 3. It's no numerical system. Instead of writing a number 1, they write Aleph, Beit, Gimel. So Shin is 300. Mem is 40, and Yud is 10. So that makes 350, right? 350. 350, if you add Yud, the first 2 letters of God's name, so you get 365. 365 happens to be the number of negative commandments. Zeshmi, it says, Zichri, if you look at the gematria, numerical value of Zichri, right? Zichri, my mention with Vav Hey, so it comes out to be 248. So let's go here. It says, my name with Yud Hey, that's 365. That's the negative commandments. Lo Taseh, the negative commandments. And Vav Hey, the last 2 letters of God's name, with this word Zichri. This is my mention that God said to Moses. This is my mention. If you add up this, numbers 7, 20, 200, 227, 237, and you add that to 11, so you get 248. That's the 248 positive commandments. So the 248 positive commandments, that is relevant to the last two letters of God's name, which is a lower level. And the negative commandments, they're relevant to the first two letters of God's name, which that's a higher level. Hine Yud Hey, the first two letters of God's name, Yud, and then Hey, that's above the last two letters of God's name, Vav Hey. In other words, Yud Hey is also a name on its own. It's a name of God. Gam also, Pirush, what does it mean? Yehei Shmei Rabbah, that's also what it means. May your name, great name, be brought to this world. Shmei means Shem Yudke, Shem Yudke. May the name of God, the first two letters of God's name, they should be made great in this world. Okay, what's the point? The point is the negative commandments are higher, the prohibitions are higher than the positive commandments. Huh? We'll see. Let's see. Okay, like it's written in another place. Also, it's Hanistros, like it says, the Nistros, the concealed things are to God, Yud-K, Elokeinu, that's, and the Niglos, that's Vav-K. The concealed aspect of God, that's the first two letters of God's name. And the revealed aspects of God, that's the last two letters of God's name. Also, this is my name, Shmi. The Shmi is above from Zichri. First of all, it says, this is my name. And when God spoke to Moses, it says, this is my name and my mention. The word Shmi is higher. It comes before my mention. Okay, the point of all this business is, in Cain, if so, the negative commandments are higher than the positive commandments. What does it mean, negative commandments? To hold yourself back from doing something that you want, but it's forbidden, is much more difficult than forcing yourself to do something that you don't want, that's a commandment. Right? A person really, really wants to get mad. Someone cuts you off on the way, and you're not supposed to get mad. So for instance, it says a person that gets mad is like serving idols, but you really want, you're just burning inside, right? That's much more difficult to hold yourself back from doing that than it is to, let's say someone asks you, would you like to put on tefillin? You put on tefillin, okay. A positive commandment. But it's much more difficult, it's a bigger change inside of you to hold yourself back from doing a forbidden thing that you won't like, that you enjoy, than to force yourself to do something good that you don't enjoy. Look, and therefore, of all mitzvahs, a person that transgresses on a positive commandment, it says you don't immediately, if you don't do a positive commandment, a person doesn't put on tefillin, he doesn't pray, he doesn't say Shema Yisrael, so immediately, as soon as he says, I'm sorry, then if he's forgiven, which is not the case. The negative commandments, if a person says he eats food that's forbidden, he does it on purpose. So he says, I'm sorry, that's not enough. You say you're sorry, then that takes away all the punishment. But God doesn't forgive you until they have to have another stage. Hainu, Lafi, because it comes from a higher level. Okay, what's the Rebbe trying to tell us here? Why is it that forcing yourself, this thing of eskafia, why is forcing yourself such a big deal by God? Why is it forcing yourself to turn from bad? Why is that such an amazing accomplishment that God reacts to it and spreads his glory out the whole world? Why? This doesn't make any sense. Why should the negative commandments be higher than the positive commandments? Shari mitzvahs, I say the positive commandment, the main thing is revealing godliness and the world by means of our deeds. It's known that the 248 commandments are the 248 limbs of God. And the negative commandment, when we withhold ourselves from doing something forbidden, it doesn't really draw anything into the world. It's not a positive thing. Huh? Like I told you the joke, I think it's a joke, that someone says today he comes home to his wife and he says, today I prevented murder. I prevented a murder. I saved someone from a murder. He says, really? Like, you're a big hero. How did you do that? He said, I held myself back. Right? He was somebody cut me off and driving someone. I was going to kill. You didn't save someone from death. You just didn't kill him. That's all. You didn't save anything. And he says, no, it's not so simple. It's not so simple. The fact of the matter is, somehow or other, holding yourself back is greater than doing something positive. How so? How so? When a person holds himself back, he just sits and he doesn't do anything. If so, how can it possibly be that that's greater than the deed, than a positive commandment? Right? Let's just take our example. If the person would have, run and jumped and saved somebody, this guy had his gun pointed at someone, and you ran and you grabbed the hold of his hand and wrestled him away, you did a good deed. You saved someone. You did. That's a good deed. That you get in the papers and everything like that. But if you happen to be the murderer and you just hold yourself back and you don't take out your gun, you're not going to be in the papers. Nobody even knows you did anything. He says, no, that's greater. Holding yourself back is greater than running in and saving someone else. How can that possibly? It doesn't make any sense. How can it be that withholding yourself, stopping yourself from doing a bad thing is greater than doing, yes, a good thing? That the negative commandments are higher than the positive. Says the Rebbe, now I'm going to tell you a big secret. It's exactly the opposite. The Fisha Shores, the source of the negative commandments, comes from a very high place. From the level of Yud-Ke, from the two first letters of God's name. If so, Ein Lam Kalim, there hasn't got any vessels for them in the world. You just have to sit and do nothing. So let's just stop here, and I want to say, let's take the example, right? A person, either I see someone pointing a gun and I jump in and I save the person. This is very heroic and very great. Or the other way around is, I have a gun and I want to pull it out on this guy. He just cut me off in driving and I'm really angry at him and just let him have it. And I don't. I hold myself back. Says that's higher. That's higher than saving. How is it higher than saving? How is it higher? Says the Rebbe here, we're talking about, first of all, spiritual things. Where did the desire to kill someone come from? Where did this anger, where's the source, the destructive source comes from? Says this comes from a very, very high place in godliness, because God creates the world so that we would have free choice, so that we would have temptations, that we would have challenges. These challenges have to be real challenges. They come from a very, very high place. So in some ways, spiritually, to conquer myself is greater than to conquer someone else. To conquer, it says it's more difficult for a person to conquer himself than it is to conquer a city. Right, to conquer himself. Here we saw that we just finished the story of Achashverosh. Purim. Achashverosh ruled over the whole world. He couldn't rule over himself. Right? He wanted his wife to come and dance in front of everybody, and she refused, so he got angry and he killed her. Couldn't control himself. Right? And that's the whole story. It's a good thing he couldn't, because that's the whole story of Purim. But on the other hand, he also couldn't control himself to destroy all the Jews. One day, he got a little bit of money and that. To control yourself is a very high thing. Why? Because where did we get all these negative impulses and urges and natures and things like that? That's from God. And it's there in order that we should fix it up. It's like diamonds under the ground. If diamonds were laying around on the street, they wouldn't be worth anything, I think. Right? Because you have to dig down, and because that they're rare. It's the same thing. to dig down inside of ourselves, go through all the dirt and all of this and get rid of all the negativity, that's an amazing thing. And that's the whole idea of serving God by sitting and, forcing ourselves to change our nature. This is an amazing thing. And that we're going to see is the whole idea of the sacrifices, the whole idea of the Holy Temple, and how we can make ourselves into a Holy Temple. But all of that is going to wait till tomorrow. And now we're going to do the Devar Malchut. 1 minute. Let's turn this